Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Before we proceed, it's always very good to revise what we have done so far so that you see how the Upanishad is moving, right? Now we have a good opportunity, we have time, and we have a new participant who has arrived, and that is our dear friend Saloni. And it is, Saloni, please introduce yourself briefly, and it's your job to tell her what you have studied so far.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. My name is Saloni, and I'm a student of Neema's for the past maybe 3 years, maybe 2.5, but I feel like I don't know what I did before I was your student. And I had a lot of resistance to going to her class because it was 11:30 in the morning, and I said, how can I go from 11:30 to 1? But now I wouldn't change that for the world. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here. And I want to know, especially Surya told me that the Ashtalakshmi session was really wonderful. So please do tell me about it.
So who is going to start? You have to start telling her what you have learned so far and how does the Upanishad move. It's a good exercise. Really, you need to think about what you are learning. Otherwise, it's very good to absorb, but it's good to think about what you have learned. Venu, you start since you're holding the mic.
Yeah, so you started and it went really well. So start. Just quickly, not like tell the whole story. Just tell the flow of just what is the question, how did it start, what is the question, and in brief, what is the answer. I mean, you don't have to do the whole thing. People can participate.
So basically, Neema did start.
What words
We have finished three questions.
3.3.
And we are on the now going to go to the fourth. So all you have to do is to tell her
what are those 3 questions and briefly what the answers are.
So basically this was about, the Prashnopanishads are about a group of 6 students who go to their teacher and they want to ask him questions about life. So the teacher tells them that before you start, you need to be prepared for the knowledge that you're going to be receiving. So you, in preparation, you start off with the 3 things which are tapas, brahmacharya, and shraddha.
super. Very good.
So somebody else would like to explain tapas?
No, just you explain, you're doing very well. Just finish your flow of thoughts that people will add. You're doing well.
Okay, so tapas is basically using your discretion over your eating habits and eating with gratitude towards the food that you consume and that it should be consumed in the best possible manner, helping you. Then there is vak tapas, which is your speech that you need to be careful about. Your words should never be hurtful and you should be mindful about how you say things. Then you have the manas tapas, which is meditation. Yeah, it's like, yeah. Vedanta is basically deeper than meditation, even because you listen to what is being taught to you and then you sit with yourself and you're supposed to assess what is being taught before you apply it to your life. And it obviously requires a lot of repeated effort and it should be continuously done. Then there is the brahmacharya, which is Vedanta teaches you that to see the whole, so that you start understanding. You tend to see just the parts of what you're living. So instead of, very often what you see is not the whole picture. So Vedanta teaches you that you are part of the whole, which is the whole picture. And then there's Shraddha, which is a certain amount of openness with which you need to understand the teaching. So you don't come with preconceived notions, you don't come with, you don't sit there listening to the teaching from your life, but for what it actually is. And that's when you can absorb it in the best possible manner.
Excellent, really excellent.
Okay, very, very good, very succinct, to the point, and captures everything that I said. Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead, it's good.
Because okay, if you don't want to. Okay, no problem. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
I'm coming from my interpretation is very different, and I'll just share this. From what I've learned so far.
No, we are not trying to talk about what we learned. We are just trying to tell her what the Upanishad is saying. So that is good because
See, generally what happens is,
Carry on.
you only take on what you are looking for, but that's wonderful. But actually what we are trying to do is what the Upanishad is saying. So we can do that, what you have learned at the last session, where I would like to know what is your takeaway. But right now, we are just trying to see what Upanishad is saying. Yeah. Then the last session, after I've taught everything, there will be another session called feedback session. In that you can tell me, I would love to know what is your take back. That is a different topic. Yeah. Now just we are seeing how the Upanishad is proceeding. Yeah.
Vibha.
Vibha.
So after the students return back to the teacher, so they prepared themselves for the further learning. The first question the first student asks is, where does the universe come from? So to this, the teacher replies that this is the time and space, and time and space within that time is universe. So the knowledge to know what to make and the world, to make the world and how to select the material is what it is. It has a few points which compiles the universe basically, which is cause and intelligence to make something. That is, the example that we used was of a pot. Knowledge and power to make a pot. It is important. Other than you need to know what sort of energy is needed, what sort of power is needed to make the product. And third is knowledge of what can be the right material to be used for that product. After that, it is maker of material can cause is as the maker of the material is the same as the one who's made the universe. So that is the most important part. There is nothing that existed in the past. There is something that was being created right there and then. That is how we can say that this is the first format of universe. There's nothing that came from previous. So that was question one.
Does anybody want to
Add anything to that? Wonderful.
the same?
Very good. So that means what she is saying, which is wonderful, because you are hearing it for the first time, Vibha?
Sorry?
You are hearing Vedanta for the
Yes,
first
yes.
time? Amazing. Very good. So she talked about, you guys figure it out. Why should I say? You try to little bit
Add your information so that
the maker of the pots can be away from the material, but in this case, the maker is the material. And so that shows us that it's pervading everything. So then we ask ourselves, where is the creator then? So it is pervading everything in the universe, because if it is the material, then it is everything that's in the universe, in space, object, time, everything. Then I'm not sure if I got this right. If this was the next question, is it what is the nature of the cause?
One second.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, very good. So now, what we are answering, the question that
We are answering is how did this universe come about?
Yeah.
And what was exactly the answer? That if there is an intelligent creation, it must have what? The cause.
Yeah.
Right? And the name of this cause in Sanskrit is what we call Ishvara. That's the name. Right? Because if you would say, what is Ishvara? What Ishvara is, what is the definition? Cause of the universe.
Can you also say there's intelligence in the universe?
Excellent. So then, when you say, oh, it must have a cause, what is the next question? Oh, if it must have a cause, what is the nature of that cause? Right? That is how logically it moves. Now, what is the nature of the cause? In order to establish that, you start with a small thing, as Vibha was saying. You start with a small, you don't start trying to explain the whole cause, because it's not easy. You need to find a method to explain that. So you first start seeing a simple object, as Vibha was explaining, like a pot. And you say, in this creation, which is a pot creation, let's look at what all is involved. What is involved is what? The knowledge. Before that pot comes into manifestation, you need knowledge. You also need what? The power. And you also need what? The material. Simple. Just starts with what? Pot, and what all is involved in order to make the pot. Now, you want to use this, that because pot is intelligently put together, there is a creator, and the creator must have what? Knowledge, power, and the material to create it. Now, if you want to find out then what exactly is the nature of the creator, the cause of the one which creates the whole universe. And as Vibha explained, if I say whole universe, I need to define what is this universe that I mean. So she said the universe is defined by time, space, and every object that exists in the universe. That is what we mean by the universe. So now, if I look at Ghatasya Karta Ghatagnaha, the pot maker must have the knowledge of the pot. The Sarvasya Karta, the one who creates time, space, and every object within time, space, what kind of knowledge there must be? Sarvagnaha. All knowledge. You need all knowledge, just logic. Now, not only you need knowledge in the case of pot, you also need what? Power. In the case of the pot maker, you need what? Power to make the pot. In the case of the one who makes the entire universe, you need what power? All power. Sarvagnaha Sarvashaktiman Ishvara. Next question. What is the material from which this all knowledge and all power make the universe? As Marisa was saying, in the case of pot, there are two distinct causes. One is a pot maker, and the other one is what? The clay, which is the material cause of the creation. There are two distinct things. But in the case of the whole creation, can you have two distinct causes? No. Logically, it's not possible. Why is it logically not possible?
Because if there was another material, then there's another creator.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. If there is already a material existing, that implies there is, because any material exists in what? Time and space. So then you can say, then there is already a creation. There is already a time, there is already a space, and there is already a material. How can I call this one the cause of the universe? You see that? Do you see that argument? You have to see it. So therefore, the material also has to be what? The same. So that means the all knowledge and all power is not only what the maker, but also the material cause of the universe, as Viresh was saying. Now, what does it imply? What it implies, as Marisa was saying, is that it is everywhere. So you can't give it what? A location which is away from you. So any understanding that you have about the cause of the universe as something which is away from you at a given place, or sometimes people use this, it's a very common thing that people use, some higher force. Higher force means you are excluded and some higher force is what? Guiding your life. This is not what Vedanta is saying. There is no higher or lower force. All that is here is intelligence. All pervading. It's not higher, it's not lower, it's everywhere. It's in and through everything. That is what you begin to understand. Now, in order to show you that it is in and through everything, what was the example that was given in the first question?
Sun and the
Excellent. Explain.
Planetary positions.
Yes.
the basically the precision with which the moon and the sun, the way they move around the earth and vice versa, the precision with which it causes seasons and tides and your day and your night, and everything is arranged so perfectly and intricately put together that it has to be some amazing intelligence that is doing it. And then you also said that the moon and the sun become the marga depending on your journey in this life that determines the path with which you will go. So even that is there for a reason, and it's arranged.
Yes. Anybody else wants to add anything to this?
Yeah, that human animal has capacity of do, not do something else.
Yes.
That choice is ours.
Yes. That's true. That's very true. Now, that's a very good summary of the first question. A postulation which is arrived at through logic, and then demonstration. Demonstration of, if I tell you all that is here is intelligence, I have to demonstrate it. Logically first you arrive at it, and then what? You demonstrate. Methodology of teaching. You see, it's not like somebody just coming and telling you some cock and bull story. There's a whole sophisticated methodology. Now, what was the second question? What then? Okay, this explanation led to a second question. What was the second question?
So how does the intelligence create the sun, moon and earth in the first place?
Excellent, excellent. Okay. What is the answer?
Through the 5 elements of earth, wind, fire, water and space. But then the question is, how does this knowledge change my life? Or do you want me to elaborate on the...
A little bit, yes. Very good.
So, all the objects that exist on the planet or in the universe are some combination, permutation of these 5 elements. And even if we were given these 5 elements, we ourselves could not put them together. So there is some higher intelligence at work that is creating the various objects through these 5 elements.
And putting them in different permutations.
And combination.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And what are the examples? How does it change your life? Can you elaborate a little bit, Preeti, or anybody else?
So when you see the whole of life as intelligence, manufacturing as different forms of life, and you develop a reverence towards everything that exists, which changes your attitude towards realizing the oneness that exists within every form. And it changes your attitude.
I think it also makes you see that you're all one. Everything and everybody is the 5 elements. The cup is the 5 elements, I am the 5 elements, everything.
Ishvara is everywhere and without it.
And you see that new things are born every second, which is the form of Brahma.
Excellent. Okay.
So now these 5 elements themselves, as we saw, are not just dead elements, they are manifestation of Ishvara. Right? They are not just, otherwise what is your understanding? Water is a dead entity, air is a dead entity, space is just some dead entity. Here everything becomes what? Manifestation of Ishvara. So this is why in Vedic times, as we saw, what the water is worshipped. The space is worshipped. We saw some temples where they actually worshipped the space. Chidambaram, very famous temple in South India. So that is, our relationship with 5 elements itself changes. Then the next is Preeti, what you are saying. The 5 elements themselves are what? What you are saying? Constantly? No, Preeti.
Yeah. No, what was it?
Now, the 5 elements themselves, you had started by saying that they, every second things come into being, which is Brahma.
Yes, so when you recognize that that is the nature of the universe, you stop your resistance to that aspect of change. And you talked about the seeming stability in a constantly changing world, which is the form of Vishnu, and which is the name we give to these phenomena. And Shiva was the force of destruction. If there was no destruction, we would be in mess. So you need, so we don't necessarily put a negative connotation to the concept of destruction, just as the food we eat, if it's not transformed into more productive forms that give life. So destruction is not necessarily a negative thing, it produces positive outcomes. So that is the force of Shiva. And then we talked about Lakshmi, but I will let somebody else do that.
Okay. No, but I wanted you to finish at least Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. So that Lakshmi, somebody else can talk about that.
Sarodi is interested in Ashtalakshmi.
But that's how Surya describes it.
I can mention the 8 Ashtalakshmis. So there are 8 categories that are subdivided. There is a Dhana Lakshmi, which refers to the wealth that you are blessed with. Dhanya Lakshmi, which is to do with the food. Griha Lakshmi, when you're blessed with home. Santana Lakshmi, which is children. Bhagya Lakshmi, or your good fortune. Aishwarya Lakshmi, or your ability to use your wealth. Gaja Lakshmi, the vehicles. And the Vijaya Lakshmi, which is your capacity of converting anything you do into success. And you can access this grace through the power of prayer.
What is the connection of Lakshmi in this? I can't remember.
Exactly. So that's what I was searching for. That where is it?
Exactly. So what we are trying to do is that the 5 elements themselves, right? The question was what was the second question? The second question was how did this, the sun and the moon and everything kind of come about? And the answer was, it was done through 5 elements. So the same intelligence, which is both the efficient and material cause of the creation, and that I showed you that the showing was what it governs the movements of the sun and the moon, and through which it makes the interactions possible. And as based on the interactions, as Nandini explained, the marga, where you go after this life on earth, is also determined. Then the next question was, how did this intelligence, how did the sun, moon, the earth, all of this come into being? How did this intelligence produce all of this? So then the second question was, through what? 5 elements. Through those 5 elements, the entire universe is produced. How do I demonstrate this fact? Right? One thing is to make a statement, and the second is demonstrating how it is so. So we take a human body and we see what is really there in this human body. There is space. Is it there or not? 2 organs in your body are separated by space. So what we call external space, and then there is what? Internal space. But is it really external and internal? Does the space get divided?
No, it's
No.
only one.
It's only one undivided space, which as though appears as what? External and internal. So therefore, space is everywhere. Now, what about water? 70% of your body is what? Water. What about fire? Your digestive system is all fire. Then earth.
We become
The whole body is actually nothing but carbon. Earth, asti, manja, carbon, earth. And vayu. Where is vayu? The air is very much there, right? So that means this is a demonstration. You don't just make a statement, you show how it is so. And you take the body of any other creature in the universe, it's all what the same. So therefore, the whole universe comes from 5 elements. But if everything comes from 5 elements, what accounts for all these variety? So that means the intelligence has to put together these 5 elements in different permutations and combinations to create the entire variety that exists in the universe. So that means this is where you see the work of intelligence. As I don't know who said, if you are given 5 elements, Preeti said, right? And you have to put it together and say, okay, now you make a human being, you make a fish, you make a bird. Can you? No. So that means this intelligence organizes everything. So therefore, not only the 5 elements are manifestation of intelligence, but at every level of organization, where those 5 elements come together to make a bird, there is at every level there is presence of the same intelligence in organization. As 2 things come together, they acquire a new property, and that again comes together with something else. It acquires further new property, and that is it's not only it's not, please don't make intelligence as the submarine, as our Swamiji used to say, which is the basis of everything. At every level of what combination, it is at work. So that is, what does it do in terms of understanding? What it tells me is, actually, there is an all-pervasive, it's not only laws which govern the universe, it's the entire universe is manifestation of this intelligence. Every body is nothing but what? A combination of 5 elements. Those 5 elements we saw further. We used quantum physics, and what did we say? One element you take, which is what? Water, which itself is a combination of what? And hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Those atoms are nothing but particles. Those particles are nothing but quarks, and it keeps going further. And ultimately, what is the building block? The intelligence. So that means it brings into manifestation the minutest of minute particles and then combines everything to create the universe. How does it change my life? As Preeti says, we generally live in this universe thinking that you're living among all these dead entities. Mountains, rivers, sun, moon, waters, everything is dead, and it is for you to extract and consume mindlessly. Now you begin to see those 5 elements as manifestation of Ishvara. There is a certain amount of reverence there. Then those 5 elements are constantly what? Coming into being. They are not just fixed, static 5 elements. They are in a flux. So that means within every second there is some new thing coming into being. A new cell is born. That power, that intelligence, capacity to bring about a new movement is called what? Brahma. And at every point there is what? A destruction or transformation. The moment which is born, by the time I finish the sentence, that moment is gone. So that means there is a destructive or transformative capacity in the universe, that which is also the work of intelligence, through which all these whole setup happens, and that is called what? Shiva. And in between this constant creation and destruction, there is a seeming stability, and that is Vishnu. Okay, so that means it creates a stage, right? Those 5 elements come together and they create a stage. Different forms. And then even though they are constantly changing, there is a seeming stability which makes what? Interaction possible. Then you can say, how come if there is one intelligence which is creating all these different forms and is making the interactions possible, why is it that everybody is different? Why everybody is not exactly at the same level and all at the same? This is what we think. When we think, oh, if Ishvara is everywhere, why is everyone not equal? That is a very common question.
That's where your karma and the choices are made.
Excellent. And this is where superb. So that means the universe is such that the intelligence gives you what? Opportunity to interact with the universe. And in order to interact with the universe, what does it give you? Free will and the choices. Now, depending upon how you collapse those choices, the forces give you what? Results. So what are those forces? Lakshmi gives you what? Resources. Saraswati gives you what? Intelligence. Durga gives you what? The power and strength. So that means the same intelligence gives you an opportunity to interact with the universe and gives you what? The result of what the way in which you have interacted with the universe. So now, when you find yourself in the universe and you see that you are lacking something, instead of either just cribbing about it or pretending that, oh, I don't care, what you do is what? Use what? These forces and ask. Because there is no human being who wants to live an impoverished life. Don't pretend you don't care. So that means generally what happens is, if you see a lack in you, what happens is, in fact, either you blame yourself and you become dissatisfied, or you become jealous, these are all the distortions that set in. What you're trying to do now with this new understanding, you acknowledge your feeling of lack and work constructively for it. That is what we call what? Helping yourself. You live in abundance. You live with fullness. You don't live with this person who's scared of the world and wants to stay away from the world. That is what we call a healthy person. So this is where the forces come into being. Do you see that, Mother? So it gives you, the 5 elements give you an opportunity to interact, and that intelligence has a feedback mechanism, and those are these forces, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and what? Durga. Now, what is the third question?
How are the 5 elements combined to make it a living entity?
Excellent.
Marisa, can you just take the mic?
So there's one more factor now that makes it the third question is, how are the 5 elements combined to make it into a living entity?
Excellent.
So there's one more force that's possible, and that's called Prana, and that is what keeps us alive. So these are the air that we are breathing, and prana, the air we are breathing. But then we can also ask us, we inhale, exhale, but we can also ask ourselves, the air is still there, our nostrils are still there when we die, but how come it's still, but we are dead? And then you went on to that when the prana actually enters the body, it's actually serving other functions, like our mind. It nourishes our mind, it nourishes our body, and operates the 5 sense organs. And so the brain is corresponding to these 5 senses that are making everything function. Our eyes, our nose, our ears function. So actually when we die, all those organs have ceased functioning. So that's when the prana is not functioning anymore. So, then you went on to talk about how the brain picks up stories and how it creates data and how we create our own stories and everything about that. And all this comes down to free will again. And the human mind is born with 4 different functions that prana comes alive. One is emotion. And when the data gets reported and the way we react, whether sadness, joy, or whatever, then the buddhi, the cognitive capacity, and how we understand things in the world. The chittam, our memory, and the memory is again divided into conscious and unconscious. And yeah? Sorry. And then ahankara, and that's the sense of self and how the sense of I. And you went on to how we confuse the sense of I, because everything is collapsed into the I. I am good, I am bad, I am proud, I am eating. But it is necessary, the word I am in this, to live in this world, because we have to use it. We can't say the stomach is digesting and things like that. But we have to understand that what we have to finally come to understand what the I is, and where we collapse the I into the actual, into the vision of oneness, where the because the ahankara inflates a lot of things, inflates our stories or deflates it or whatever. So the Vedanta is not trying to eliminate the sense of I. It is a function of the mind. But we need to eliminate all the distortions that we are creating, and so that we can become a nourished person and have a healthy sense of I at the end of it. Yeah. And so you said, what is a healthy sense of I? And the answer is that there's that we understand that the intelligence has manifested, like we have said, in many forms, and I'm one of those forms. And when I realize that I am connected, that sense of isolation goes, and I'm a unique manifestation. I am not unlike anybody else also. And then you went on to apana, like the exhaling, which is an important function which releases the carbon and all the impurities, and part of it is the excretion in the body. Then you went on to samana, which is the digestion, and that is the digestive tract. And then the vyana, which is the circulation in the body, and udana, which was our last breath. And so how many breaths we are assigned to, and then you went on to the karmas after that.
Anybody else wants to add anything? Yeah. Rasan?
The chitta is, there is a conscious memory and an unconscious memory, and the ability to change at the appropriate times.
See, the question was that how does these 5 elements, they are put together, but none of them can you imagine 5 elements as being able to interact in the universe? So there is a force which is required. So the intelligence brings about that force which enables every living entity to interact with the universe, and that is what prana. So the same air which was outside is what, when you breathe, it comes inside and it performs a function. So as Marisa said, there are 5 functions. The first is prana, inhaling. What does this inhaling do? It keeps the body alive. But by doing so, what does it mean? When it keeps the body alive, what essentially it means? It means that it is making your 5 senses perform their function, and it makes what? Your mind perform. That's what it means. Right? Now how, and it gives you an opportunity to perform. And how you perform it, it depends upon what? Your wisdom. So that means there are functions that are given. How you make use of those functions is up to you. Right? So the senses are given the capacity to capture the data, and the mind is given the capacity to process the data, and that processing has 4 functions. What are the 4 functions? emotion, as Marisa said, intellect, then memory and eye sense. How you use it, it what depends upon you. Just gives you an opportunity to do it. The apana, which is breathing out, what does it do? It doesn't just, it's not just, okay, I breathe in and I breathe out. The breathing out has a function, which is a different function. And what is that? Detoxifying your body. So just by the act of breathing out, what you are doing is what? Taking out carbon dioxide. But in addition to that, what, as Marisa said, there are functions of excretion that also are at work. So that is what we call apana. Then there is samana. So that means that the prana also allows you to what? Eat the food, to sustain your body and digest the food so that you can what? Extract nutrients so that you can keep the body healthy. That is also a function of prana, samana. Then there is vyana. What is vyana? The circulation. Circulation is what? That it keeps the blood through all these nadis, what? Reach every corner, nook and corner of your body. And finally, it is what? The last udana, which is the last breath. So,
Take a flight.
take a flight. And your last breath, and this is what I said that as Marisa already, you actually repeated the whole class, Marisa. It was very good. Okay. Really, very good. You captured everything. There is nothing that you didn't capture. Then what this last breath is what? The end of, what did we see? Your prarabdha. Your time here is over.
Is there any way to extend a little bit?
Yeah, through Swamiji used to say, the way to extend is, because suppose, now this is what, suppose you do, on an average, how long does it take for you to breathe in? And this is what, I think, who asked? Hanish asked? Who came up to me and said, no, Rajiv said, Rajiv came and asked me, right? Suppose so on an average it takes what? Few seconds. Suppose you do pranayama and you extend the time for your one breath, and you extend the time for breathing out, then over a period of time, what happens? The time that you take to finish your breath becomes what? Longer. You increase your longevity.
So we are scared, we breathe too fast.
Jogging athletes, they have to be
The fast, exactly. So that means generally it's fractions. Even if, first example, right? If that little time is not some huge time, right? So maybe at the most 6 months, 8 months, it's not like some huge difference.
No, they say that resting breath rate is less.
Yeah. So that means what happens is, this is the way you're given the time on this earth. And then you have to ask yourself, how am I going to use this time on my earth?
So Neema, just how the 5 elements combine to make an entity. So just like a conclusion, after we talked about the prana and the different functions. So you summarize and you summarize and then you just say that all these functions, the prana and all the sub-functions, is what is making us survive.
Yes.
And giving us the choices to
Use your life.
use your life.
Yes.
And this is the upper after karma and everything.
Yes. I talked about what? 3 karmas. What are the 3 karmas? So that means in this breath, what all is given to us, this breathing time that we have, some thousands and millions of breaths, which will take what, 80, 90, 100 years to finish. In this, how does the life unfold? Through what? Prarabdha karma. So what we did is what? 3 different types of karma. What? Prarabdha karma, Sanchita karma and Agami karma. What is it, Neebu? Come on, you are leaving, you have to say something. Not her, faith.
Sanchita karma is your whole account of karma.
Okay, please take, Hanish, take.
So Sanchit karma is your whole account of karma. And Prarabdha karma is one life and what is the account of that. And Agani karma is what you accumulate in one life.
Excellent, super. Very clear, very succinct, perfect.
He's a banker, so it comes
He's a banker, he knows how to present. Very precise, very to the point. Wonderful. Okay? So, one, there is your whole account which is what accumulated over years, through which mechanism every action that you do, you produce what? Excellent. Seen and unseen result. Drishta phalam and adrishta phalam. Drishta phalam is the minute you perform an action, the universe gives you a feedback about the nature of your action. The minute you do something good to somebody, before even anybody else notices it, or anybody acknowledges you for it, you know that you've done something right. You feel good. That is what we call drishta phalam. And the adrishta phalam is something which will accrue to you later. It's your account. And that is an appropriate action will lead to a pleasant situation in the future. You don't know when and you don't know how, in which form, and that is called punya. And an inappropriate action, in addition to giving you a conflict, will give you what? Some difficulty in the future, and that is called what? Papa karma. But you don't know when and how. So this is what we call punya and papa. Everything that is accumulated which has not yet fructified is what? Sanchita karma. All your karmas cannot all manifest all at the same time. Depending upon the number of breaths that are given to you, that set of karma will come into fructification. That is called prarabdha karma.
It's connected with desire.
So you're right. So that means your prarabdha karma, very good. It's very much connected to your inclinations and desires. Very, very connected. What it means is, suppose my prarabdha karma is to, let's say there is a life journey, and this particular set of karmas, suppose, right, are meant for you to, suppose, progress with this spiritual learning which is incomplete. What will happen is, somehow or the other, the desire will come to what? Enhance yourself. Or even if you particularly do not have that desire, an opportunity will come. Somebody will invite you. Somebody will say, hey, this is a good thing to attend, come. And you may think, Vibha was telling me, she's so sweet, she's so honest. She says, we got invited to come to this, and I was in between jobs, and I said, yeah, let's go, and let's see what it is. And she said, I didn't know what I was in for. And she said, what I have learned during these days will impact the rest of my life. How I live, how I view things. And then Hanish, being a banker, he was very practical, and he said, we'll fight less. So that means, really. So that means when the trigger comes, even if you don't actively have a desire, opportunity will come, and people like Faye and Viresh will become what? Triggers. Yesterday we were chatting and he was saying how many people they inspired to come. And then when they see it, their life, the whole trajectory of life changes. So therefore, this is what happens. If you're here and if a desire will, even if it was not there before, it will be created. And when it is created, then what? The whole course of life changes. Your whole course of life changes. That's why it's a very significant event in the life of a person. When you get to here, I think very beautifully, we do say, it's the knowledge of the whole. Otherwise, what happens? We live with a very partial knowledge of things. And maybe we are living well with that partial knowledge. It's not like we are not living well with partial knowledge. But when the knowledge is partial, the totality is missing. With that vision, you can do what you do equally well, and you can actually increase your participation even manifold. Because you learn to begin to flow with this intelligence. Flow with the universe. And the universe, as we will see when you own, I will show how it changes your life. The magnitude with which it changes your life. I'll do that when I come to the fifth question.
We can do group photograph.
Yeah, now let's do group photograph. Now that we have revised and Saloni knows what we have studied. Now the fourth question, which will hopefully answer Senthil's question. So that I know he is waiting, and that we will do in the next class. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.